Yo, hello. It is Friday, May 9th. I'm going to do some quick news updates. I also, by the way, really want to get on here before the weekend. Next week, I'm going to start doing some live streams a few times a week and just get into some different crypto news, DePIN news, crypto news, global news, and kind of break down things because I was doing it like once a month and there's just so much happening right now. So I want to be able to get updates out on a regular basis. By the way, rocking some 375 AI gear. I'm going to be getting them on to do an interview in the next couple of weeks. So super excited about that. They're doing some really big things right now. I'm partnering with a lot of different DePIN projects. But let's get into some DePIN news first and foremost. Oh, by the way, I have like a all right. Y'all, the markets are starting to pick up a bit, and Helium has been making some really big moves, y'all. You look at their subscriber growth, their network demand. I think Helium is a prime candidate to have a major bounce when other alts bounce, assuming that this surge that we're seeing will continue. And I happen to think that it will for a little while. If we look at the Helium price, by the way, right now we're just over $4. So we have seen a nice climb up over the last month. And the fundamentals on Helium are looking really, really good recently. So super excited to see what happens with Helium in the coming months. DABA Network is seeing massive network usage. And I expect that's going to continue. You know, they've sold over 12,000 hotspots now, and they're continuing to sell more. By the way, I also interviewed their CEO. I posted it earlier this week. Highly recommend checking that out. We get into a lot of the details around DABA and what they're doing. I think that project has a ton of promise, and they're really starting to get their feet under them right now. So super excited to see where that goes. I expect the TGE, the token launch, to happen in the next month or two. Rover had their token launch. Look, I think this is a really interesting project. They're doing HD mapping. So not doing like what Helium or what HiveMapper is doing. I think a lot of people think they're in the competition with each other. It's quite different what they're doing. And there is a demand, and there is, they can charge a lot for that imagery, for the high definition mapping. I think it's like $1,000 a kilometer, somewhere in that range. So I'm curious to see where this goes. They did start shipping out their hardware. I think they've had some issues with like uploading data because there's so much data, but they'll work through it, man. You're going to have growing pains early on in a project. That's just what's going to happen. Obviously, token launched, price went up a bunch, has corrected a bit, but Rover's one to keep an eye on. But they just finally got that token launched here this last week, actually. And then I don't know if y'all saw it, but I did host the AMA for HiveMapper. Really good discussion with Ariel about the things they're doing. Got into nitty-gritty details on the B delivery dates, the Wi-Fi model, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So highly recommend giving that a listen if you are involved in HiveMapper to kind of get figure out what's going on with that project looking forward. But I will get into, looks like I'm lagging a little bit here. I don't know what's going on. Let's see here. Let me close a couple things. Let me see if I can. I don't know if am I lagging right now? Can you all let me know if I'm lagging? Looked like I was for a second there. I'm gonna close out some screens. There's a lot going on in the broader crypto space, though. So that's what I'm gonna touch on now is what's happening in the broader crypto industry. So let me switch my screen over here. How are y'all doing, by the way? Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. I don't know why I'm lagging. Weird. We are going to pull up the broader crypto news. Bitcoin, y'all. Bitcoin is running. Love it. There's a lot of people that predicted this. I think looking at the global M2 money supply, more and more accounts are picking it up. I forget what's the guy's name, Colin. I came across it like 2 months ago, and he was talking about this, and it seems to be pretty well correlated. If it continues, we should still continue to see a run up really into the mid end of July, I believe, is the global M2 runs up all the way till then. We'll see if that correlation holds, y'all, because I am going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the trade wars, some of the things that are a little bit concerning in the underlying economy that we may see a pause in this run. I think in the short, really short term, though, May and June, I think we could still continue to see a nice run up in markets. But Bitcoin is looking nice, man. We saw, where are we sitting right now? 103,000. Unbelievable. It's crazy to think we were just in the 70s like a month ago. So quite a run up. Ethereum's even having a run up. Like, I talked about this. I was on a happy hour with the DePIN happy hour a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about how it's like Ethereum seems to be undervalued because there's so much institutional investment in Ethereum. And I feel like people are just sleeping on it. Now, they did just have a huge update on Ethereum, this Pectra update. So I was looking at the notes here. This Cyclop guy put out a pretty good tweet about it. But there's a number of things that they changed. So one is that you'll be able to perform multiple actions with one transaction. You'll also be able to set a daily withdrawal limit. So I guess that'll help you with your security, so you're not getting drained. And I think you can also now send transactions without having to necessarily hold ETH for gas. So some really important upgrades. The other thing I thought was interesting is like 94% of Trump's holdings are on Ethereum blockchain. So, as institutional buyers are all over ETH right now. That may change if we get a Solana ETF, spot ETF launch, which I think we will. Just a question of when. But, ETH was due for a run. Now, will this continue on? We'll have to wait and see. But, man, we were just down in the 1400s. Gosh, like just a couple weeks ago. So things are running hard right now. I will say though, and I have put out plenty of videos on this, like the fear and greed index is certainly something that I'm watching very closely. It's amazing how quickly people and X changes their tune as soon as we have any bullish price movement. Everyone's like, oh, Bitcoin's going to hit $1 million by the end of the year. We're going to have like epic alt season into 2026. I think we need to be a little bit cautious. If you look at what's happened with the fear and greed index, at least in this bull run, y'all, anytime we've touched the high 80s into 90, it has not stayed up there very long. And the market highs have set in within 2 to 3 weeks. Very different than what we saw in the last market cycle where we had extended periods in greed. And I think a big part of that is because retail does not have money. Like that's the bottom line, in my opinion, why we haven't seen like crazy alt season yet is because I think people are not in a great spot to invest their money. There are some things like Solana ETF that I think could change that a bit. I'm going to talk more about the macroeconomic stuff though here in a minute, but this is something I'm absolutely looking at to play the volatility because especially with Trump in office, like he could get up one day and send out a tweet and just destroy the markets and you don't see it coming. So I think it's going to be really, really important to stable up when there's greed in the markets, when the market's overheated, to have stables to push back in the markets if we see crashes, which I think there's going to be plenty of volatility to play in the coming months, in the coming years, likely. Some other big news. We had 2 states have fully approved their Bitcoin reserve legislation, Arizona and New Hampshire. So that's huge news. And I think that we will see more states follow. It's not just states though. Goldman Sachs just came out today. They are holding $1.6 billion of Bitcoin ETFs. That's massive. Goldman Sachs for a long time was like very anti-crypto. So seeing these types of announcements, that's absolutely huge. You've got BlackRock is meeting with the crypto task force to discuss staking, tokenization, and ETF approval standards. So big things are all happening. Like we have so many positive tailwinds right now. A lot of reasons to be bullish, but again, the one thing that gives me pause is like what's going on in the macro environment. There's just the underlying economy, the trade wars. There's a lot of stuff. It's like wars all over the world right now. A lot of things to be cautious about. Again, There's rumors that Saudi Arabia has been buying Bitcoin and ETH. I would not at all be surprised. Well, I don't know about ETH. I wouldn't be surprised about Bitcoin though. Like countries around the world are stacking Bitcoin. There's no doubt about it. Like in China already is the second largest holder behind us, but the BRICS plus countries are buying gold and Bitcoin. In it came out that I think over the last summer, that Russia is investing in mining, Bitcoin mining in all the other BRICS plus countries. Like they are looking to de-dollarize, and they're already doing a lot of trade in their own currencies. There's speculation that they're going to launch their own currency. I have a really extensive video on this that I put out about when I predicted the strategic Bitcoin reserve would get passed. I put that out in like December. So yeah, I'm not surprised that Saudi Arabia is buying billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. I thought this is interesting though. You have Saudi Arabia is having an investor conference. Look at the names going out to this thing. Larry Fink with BlackRock. You have Elon. You have Mark Zuckerberg. Unbelievable. So I think we're going to be getting a lot of investment in the U.S. from Saudi Arabia in the coming years. So I got a phone call coming in here. Oh, Facebook. So do y'all remember? So Facebook was going to launch a stable coin like 3 years ago, and they scrapped it. Looks like they are bringing back crypto payments though for their users. We're going to see more and more of this. Like these are the types of things that are going to just light the fuse. I think we're going to continue to see Bitcoin hit new all-time highs. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Bitcoin hit a new all-time high in the next like week or two, maybe even the coming days. Who knows? Some of that's going to depend on what happens tomorrow. China and the U.S. are meeting tomorrow to open up trade negotiations. We'll talk about that though. Steak and Shake. I thought this was interesting. They're going to start accepting Bitcoin payments. Again, we're going to see more and more of this where companies are accepting Bitcoin payments. Super exciting stuff. Any idea, construct, destruct? Any idea when Xbit's going to launch their coin? I don't know. I need to reach out to Mark. That's one that I'm super excited about. And you know what's crazy is I think Xbit is flying under the radar so much. Like I haven't seen any other YouTubers really cover it. It's crazy to me. I think that project's going to be absolutely a monster. You look at some of these, like Akash Network, you look at some of these other, IONet's another one, decentralized GPU projects. Like those are great projects, don't get me wrong, but they're not doing what Exabits is going to be able to do with, their AI data centers they're building out. So they're going to be able to hit a whole different market and really leverage that to bring in Web 2 customers. Like, I don't know. I am curious. I'll see if I can find out when that token launch is going to happen. I think last they expected like by end of Q2 or Q3. So we'll see. But that's when I'm planning on absolutely taking a pretty large position in when it does happen for sure. And then JD Vance can be at the Bitcoin conference. Like, doesn't he looks kind of punchable? His face looks punchable in this picture, doesn't it? It's kind of weird. But anyway, that's big news, man. That is big news. JD Vance can be at Bitcoin in Las Vegas. By the way, I'm planning on getting out there as well. I think Suburban Crypto is going to be there. I don't know if you ever listen to Spaces on X, you should definitely join. We do an X Space on DePIN every Tuesday. So if you don't follow me on X, definitely follow me there. If you're on X, because I'm streaming to both, and you don't follow me on YouTube, make sure to follow me on there, on both of them. This next week, by the way, on our space, I think we're going to do a hot take. I haven't told the guys yet, but we're going to do a hot take and bold predictions session. So really excited about that. How high do we think Bitcoin's price is going to get? What's going to be by the end of the year? Also talk about like what we think the top DePIN project of the year is. Just make some bold predictions around that too. So super excited about that. Let's see here. Let's talk about the macro economy. And I think it's more important than ever to talk about what's happening with the trade wars and all around the world just in general, because the macro has such a big impact on what's going to happen in the markets, frankly. I mean, we've seen this. We saw markets get wrecked after the tariffs were announced. Any good news at this point, anything, even an inkling of good news, we're seeing the markets just absolutely rip upward. Is it sustainable, though? That's really the question. And what's going to happen with China? But first, we did have some big news break this week. With the UK. Let me pull this up real quick. So the UK was the first official trade deal that was launched. Super exciting stuff there. Some people are saying that it's not a big deal, but I think it's a big deal. I mean, we're at least getting something started there. And it sounds like Scott Bessent said that they're talking to, I think, like 20, maybe it's like 18 different countries. Some of them are in pretty late stage negotiations. I think India is one of those countries that looks like we're going to get something done pretty soon here. But the one that everyone is waiting for is China. China's the big one, man. And I don't know if you all saw this, but Scott Bessent is supposed to be meeting with China tomorrow in Switzerland, actually. And it was, I guess Trump came out and then Xi came out and it's like, well, no, the US asked to meet. And then Trump's like, no, China asked to meet. And it's like, it's just so ridiculous at this point. They both need to get to the table. Like this is, it's gotten to the point now where we have to get something done. And they framed it as an embargo, which it is. Like we have 145% tariffs on them. They have 125% tariffs on us. You really cannot trade with tariffs that high. It is an embargo. What's happening, we saw that a bunch of companies, front loaded their shipments before the tariffs hit. So that will give some breathing room to bigger companies that can afford to do that, but medium to small size businesses can't do that. And we're also absolutely, China is circumventing these tariffs through other countries. They were already doing that through like Vietnam, through Mexico. I'm sure that just is cranked up to a whole new level because we still have 10% tariffs in those countries, but that's a hell of a lot better than 145%. But needless to say, like the shipments are way down. When you talk, you look at the LA ports, there's not much coming through, and we're just about to start seeing the impact of this. And this is one of the things that I'm concerned about as far as whether or not this rally can last, because it takes roughly 45 days from the time they ship out in China to hit the ports over here. And we're coming up on that in the next week or two, where we're going to start seeing the impact of these tariffs on China. And you have to think of what that's going to impact. People that are truckers, people that are port workers, that's like the first thing it's going to impact. But then we're going to have shortages of things. Now, again, negotiations are happening tomorrow, and Trump. Sorry, some of you I'll read that in a second. But yeah, negotiations are starting tomorrow. Trump shot out a figure that, or I guess it was leaked, that we may drop him to 50%. Then Trump sent out some tweet that, oh yeah, maybe 80% is the right number, and just like throwing random shit out there. Crazy. Now, some economists are saying that 50%, we can still continue to do some business with them, but like only if you're a really high profit margin business. Like small and medium-sized businesses that don't operate on huge profit margins, like that's still not going to work. And that is what gives me pause in this whole thing. I mean, aside from the fact that like Trump came out and was like suggesting 80% tariffs, then he basically said, oh, well, it's up to what Scott Bessent wants to do. And I'm like, bro, you better not be putting Scott Bessent out there as your sacrificial lamb in this whole thing, because he's the only person that gives me hope that we'll get out of this, like minimizing damage. And then China's commerce minister came out and said, we firmly oppose the abuse of reciprocal tariffs. And like, this is what I'm concerned about. We saw this huge rally based on this news. We need to have positive news tomorrow, or I think, markets are going to be negatively impacted. And no news is, in this case, I think, not good news. I think that would be looked at as bad news, actually. We need some positive development tomorrow. And whatever happens with the crypto markets over the weekend, I think we can expect a continuation of that on Monday when the stock market's open. So I hope we get a positive development, but I'm actually not expecting it because, Xi and Trump, they're having this like pissing match right now, and both of them want to come out as if they're the winners in this whole thing. And I could see them talking and then, someone saying something that pisses the other one off, and then all of a sudden, like nothing happens tomorrow. And that would be, I think, problematic, at least in the short term. Now, if we get some positive news out of this thing, we could continue to see this rally for sure. So we'll have to wait and see what plays out there. Something else, China and Russia are getting pretty chummy. This is nothing new. With BRICS Plus, they have been working together for some time. In fact, it's already rumored that most of their trade right now is not in US dollars anymore. But they met this past week. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on, y'all. BRICS Plus is something to keep an eye on in general. No one's really taking them seriously, but they're adding a ton of countries to their coalition. They had a huge summit this past fall where they talked about, basically, number one thing they talked about was getting away from the dollar. And then the other thing was launching their own currency backed by gold and Bitcoin. So it's like, hey, yeah, we probably need to take it seriously. Trump actually did come out and say if they launch their own currency that he's going to put tariffs on them. But, well, now he already has tariffs off them. Let's see. So Shane M said, did you catch that Rover GeoNet partnership on Spaces call yesterday? Yeah, so I didn't see the announcement, but I kind of knew that there was a partnership. When I went onto Rover's site to look at their different hardware, one of them mentioned that they're using GeoNet. I think it's like the Tarantula is using GeoNet. I also talk to Mike Horton pretty regularly. And he's really high on that project. Like he really is a big fan of Rover, and I think very highly of Mike Horton. He's done a tremendous job with GeoNet. And super smart guy. Like they've done a great job. I didn't know that they would be burning GOD tokens. I mean, it makes sense if they're using the GOD network. That's cool though. I love that. I would love to see more partnerships between DePIN projects. I think we'll see more of that. We've seen that with like Daba. Daba is partnered with WeatherXM, where you can now buy. Let me move that off the screen there. Now where you can buy hardware for both, and they'll actually deploy it for you. So I think we're going to see more and more DePIN projects collaborate like that, and I think that's good for the space. Ultimately, I'd love to see them start to use like Deep Network or Flux, to get away from AWS and start going fully decentralized. And I think we'll get there in time. But eventually, I think being fully decentralized will kind of be like the normal and the standard for DePIN. Right now, a lot of them are still using AWS, unfortunately. What else we got? Oh, I bring this up with India and Pakistan. They're now at war with each other, and both of them have a lot of nuclear warheads. But I bring this up because these types of events can really crush markets. The markets can only handle so much at a time. So when you have like the tariff wars, you have the Ukraine-Russia conflict, now you have India and Pakistan. Like the more of these things that pile up, the more likely it is that the markets are going to freak out at some point. So, this is something to definitely keep an eye on. China came out and was like, hey, y'all need to chill out. There was some news I haven't verified, though. There's some news that I think Ukraine announced a ceasefire. I don't know if that's true. I saw several accounts report that. You have to verify everything, though, y'all. Like anything you see, especially on X, accounts will post stuff and they won't verify it. Someone said, I'm worried about that because I'm deep in Daba. B13SR. Yeah. I'm not super concerned about that. I would say like I'm actually more bullish on Daba than a lot of other projects right now because they don't have to worry about the tariffs that we have to worry about in the US right now because they're deploying everything in India. Yeah, I mean, if it continues to escalate, certainly that would be a concern. But I would imagine that, especially with them being nuclear powers, and the U.S. is in late stage conversations with India on trade deals. I think they'll get some. I think they'll figure that thing out. I hope so. But it's definitely worth keeping a close eye on for sure, because these types of events can have an impact on markets. The other thing I want to bring up, this is something that we're going to see a lot more of. It was coming up there for a little bit, especially when the market was down recently, was the amount of debt that is rolling over this year for the U.S. And this is really important. And I think the chart, I like the chart because it shows you a good representation of the debt that's coming due in the coming years. This year is a huge outlier, and this is a big deal. Okay, it says 7 trillion. I've also seen as much as 9 trillion coming due this year. But anyway, a lot of that is coming due in June and July. And the reason why this is important is, they're going to see a lot more talk about this 10-year Treasury yield right now sitting at 4.38%. This percentage is going to majorly impact the amount of interest we're paying on this debt that we're rolling over. And we want to get this percentage down as much as possible. And there's going to be a lot more talk about this 10-year Treasury. I think partly Trump pushing on Powell to lower rates is this issue for sure. The other is that I think he wants to stimulate the economy. But again, this is a big deal. For every 1% that we can drop, that's like $70 billion a year in interest. Okay. But if it goes the opposite direction, that's true as well. We pay more in interest. And other countries know this. I mean, if you look at the big treasury holders, Japan's the biggest, China's the second largest. They could, in essence, sell off treasuries and move it into their own currencies. And that would, by dropping the demand for our treasuries, I mean, that percentage would likely be driven up. And they could screw us if they wanted to on that. So that's why I bring it up, is because this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of talk around this 10-year Treasury yield over the next couple of months as that debt comes due. And that brings me to the next part, which is okay, what is the expectation now for the Fed? Things have shifted a lot. We just had the meeting this week. Nothing changed. That was expected. I talked about that a month ago in one of my videos where it was very, very unlikely would have a rate cut in May. And, if you listen to what Jerome Powell's saying, he's basically saying we need the tariff situation to get itself sorted out because we don't know what to expect right now with tariffs. Once that gets sorted out, then we can start making changes to rates. We can start quantitative easing. And as of right now, I mean, it was expected that there would be about 50% chance of no change, but it was about 50% chance that we were going to see rate cuts in June. In the last week, look at the shift. I mean, now it's looking at 86% chance of no cuts in June. That's pretty staggering change. If we look out to July, which is the next meeting after that, there's a 55% chance, so 45% chance of a rate cut in July. Now, this can change quickly depending on what happens in the economy. And this is something that concerns me right now about the overall state of the economy. And I know the markets are rallying right now, but the underlying economy is not strong. That's just, we saw last year, the job market numbers were not truly indicative of the strength of the economy at all. We had in the private sector, we had 1 million less full-time jobs under Biden's last year of his presidency. Yes, we saw a lot of government jobs added to kind of mask that. The other thing, though, is the gig economy. And so the gig economy is essentially these, Uber jobs, these Lyft jobs, Uber Eats, jobs like Amazon Flex. This is something that we didn't see in the past. Like in the 2008 recession, those jobs weren't available where you just download an app and basically take on employment. The gig economy has very much masked the true job numbers. That's why when you look at unemployment, there's more people working multiple part-time jobs than any time in history. You might think, well, okay, so they're still working. The problem is that just if things don't improve, that just kind of masks the weakness of the job market for a period of time. But eventually you have to think, as more people get laid off and more drivers add, to that, or added to Uber and Lyft, you start to have a surplus of drivers. Not to mention consumer sentiment is the lowest, like in the fucking tank, man. Like, sorry, don't mean to cuss, but people aren't spending money. You're seeing that, like, there's payment plans right now for Uber Eats. Like, that is not a good sign. So if there's not enough demand for these services and there's too many drivers, like, you're going to now start seeing people that are like, they're not making enough money. They're going to join that unemployment line and start collecting unemployment. The other thing we're seeing that's very troubling is that a lot of these companies, like Walmart's one of them, they're removing forward-looking guidance altogether at their earnings calls. They don't know at first. They don't want their stock to tank, I think, and they know what's coming with these tariffs. So the other reports coming out are that a lot of these businesses are currently putting together lists. They haven't started mass layoffs yet, but they're saying, hey, if things don't improve, we're making lists of the employees that we're going to be laying off. So that's like, none of that is good, so I don't mean to like rain on the parade of like the markets turning bullish right now. I'm very excited about that. And I think that can continue, but I think it's really, really important to put this into perspective here. And again, be really diligent if we see that greed index increase to move into some stables and lock in some profits, because things could take a negative turn, in my opinion. And I think if it happens, it's going to happen pretty quickly. It could be ugly. Now, the good news in all of this is that if we learn anything from 2008, the Fed is going to step in. And I don't think it'll be a prolonged down period. They're going to just, print money, lower rates. In the long term, that's horrible, but I think that it would bail us out. So again, having stables when the market's overheated to be able to push into the market if we see a drop like that, I think is going to be really important. One other thing I want to bring up, because I think we're going to see, and then I'm going to close out after that, is they're going to see more and more. We're seeing more and more talk about stagflation. Okay. And I don't think it's necessarily a risk, but stagflation is basically the economy being stagnant and inflation at the same time. And that's not what you want. That's a horrible situation for the Fed. Okay. The Fed has really two main objectives. Number one is price stability. So keep inflation at 2% if possible. That's their goal. And to keep the job market strong. Stagflation is essentially when both are going wrong at the same time. And the Fed is then in a really bad situation, because to stimulate the job market, they have to essentially lower rates and utilize quantitative easing. But that increases inflation. So they've got to choose. Do they let the job market get crushed to fight inflation, or do they save the job market and risk inflation coming back? My bet is that they're going to take the job market over inflation all day. They'll let inflation come back to save the job market, right? So, but I think you're going to see more people talking about stagflation. You're already starting to see it. Now, these tariffs they should be a one-time price increase, is what they're saying. Generally, with tariffs as they go through, you see it, one-time price shock, and then it stables out. We'll see. We'll see about that. We'll see how these trade talks go. I personally think that they're going to end up landing somewhere in like 10% range with most of these countries. I think a lot of it was because China was going through other countries to get around the tariffs we had on them in the first place. So I think 10% is where we're going to land with most of them. China will probably end up being a little bit higher. It could take a while though. Tomorrow we need to see what news comes out. Oh man, I hope there's good news. Someone said that they think stimulus checks incoming signed by Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if y'all remember back in COVID. You remember the stimulus checks were like delayed for a couple of days because Trump wanted to make sure his signature is on there. it actually worked out, I think, for him. As a political win, people saw his name on there, and they're like, "Yeah, Trump gave us money." I wouldn't be surprised if we see stimulus checks. They've been throwing that idea around as far as like the savings from Doge funneling down to the people. I don't know if you saw this, something that came out today, maybe yesterday. I think it was today. They're talking about increasing the tax rate for people making over $2.5 million by 2%. That's interesting. If that happens, I don't know how the media would spin that because they'd find a way to spin it somehow. And Trump's on video saying like, "Hey, yeah, I'm fine, redistributing the wealth from the people making over 2.5 million to the middle class and lower class." We'll see. We'll see if it happens. Doge refund checks come. I hope so, man. That's the type of thing that could push us to see a real alt season like those, because you have to think, just from like a high level view, this bull run has been led by Bitcoin, but it's been institutional investment. It hasn't really been run by retail. So what, and retail is not going to, or sorry, institutional buyers aren't going to go get into DePIN projects yet. I think in the future we might see that. We probably will see that, but we're not there yet. So what is it going to take to get these alts to make their move? Well, I think we need retail. One way that could happen, though, indirectly, and I've said this before, is the Solana ETFs, because if institutional buyers come in and pump the price of Solana, well, you've got a bunch of retail people that are holding Solana that can take profits and move it into other alts. So I think that could be a big move. Let's see here. I don't like how Daba decided everyone the same amount of tokens in season 2, regardless of when you bought in on season 2. I thought they adjusted that. Or maybe that was season 1 that they adjusted it. I guess it was season 1 they adjusted it. Yeah. That's kind of a bummer that. Well, I don't know. I know they originally everyone's gonna get the same amount of Genesis tokens. I could be wrong here though. They maybe that was season 1. Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I think if you bought in early, you got in earlier, you should get more Genesis tokens. I agree with that because you've been in the line longer. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I want to see. I have been noticing. I've been looking at their dashboard. Like they do have installs going in. I'm curious whether they're staying fully updated on the amount of hotspots that are installed. I think they're over 5,000 now. They've sold 12,000. So I'd like to see that the rate at which they install those things pick up a little bit, but it's moving in the right direction. And it also, if you think about this, like Helium got to almost 1 million IoT hotspots deployed in the last bull run, but like how many of them were actually generating revenue and usage, right? Like with, maybe 5% probably, if that, because the manufacturers had to build hardware that could actually use the network. In this case, all of the Daba hotspots that are getting installed are all getting usage and generating revenue. So that's, comparing it to Helium and the amount of deployments, I think you really have to like multiply that 5,000 by like 20 to kind of make it apples to apples. I mean, it'd be the equivalent of like having 100,000 deployments on Helium in the last market cycle, at least. But I like what Daba's doing. But yeah, I agree with you, Shane. I agree with you. Let's see here. See if I have anything else I wanted to cover. One other thing I'm lagging again. One other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that I read that the U.S. is talking about putting more sanctions on China for buying oil from Iran, which they should. No one's supposed to be buying oil from Iran right now. A lot of that money ends up going and funneling terrorism and funding terrorism. And China's been like basically just saying like, F you, we're just going to do it anyway. They've been buying Iran's like oil production's done like a 7x in the last 3 years. So that's got to stop. So I saw something with that. So that might be here. I predict that there's going to be like fentanyl is going to be included in the China talks. There's been rumors for some time, and I think it's pretty widely accepted at this point that China has been funneling fentanyl through the southern border to the U.S. So I think you're going to see that as part of the trade discussions. So shutting down the fentanyl side of things. and then the Iran oil. I don't like how circulating supply on day one would be higher than it. Let's see here. I'm guessing they did that because of a big investor coming in to buy the remainder of season 2 supply. Oh, maybe. Yeah, I could see that. So what? Like, I don't care. I mean, I guess if they're a big enough investor, but they weren't having any trouble selling. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, season 1 for them was open from May all the way to January, and then all of a sudden it's like boom. People kind of caught wind of what they were doing. I don't know if you're the one that comments on my YouTube videos under the Shazane or not, but if you're the same person or not. Why am I lagging? What's going on here? You close out some more stuff. But yeah, this guy Shazane was commenting. He's the one that the main reason I looked at Daba so deeply. So shout out to you, if that is you. I don't know if that's you or not. And I don't like how circulating supply on day one would be higher now because of it. Yeah. I think though, I mean, the tokens unlock daily, right? So you can't, or at least they're locked for a period of time. So I think you only get so many per day that you can actually sell. I don't know. I'm not super concerned about the Daba supply just because they're going to have token burns right off the bat, which is so nice. And they're going to have revenue coming through the door on day one. We've seen so many projects where they launch tokens and there's just no buying pressure at all. And people are just selling, the miners are selling, and it takes forever for them to turn on revenue. So I definitely appreciate the fact they're going to have, sorry, I'm reading a comment here, but I definitely appreciate the fact that they are going to have revenue immediately. Deep Network, same thing. I really like that project. The DEEEP, that is. Just check Grok. 350 to 650 per household. I mean, that'd be nice. That 5,000 rumor getting tricked. I saw 5,000. I saw 10,000. Yeah, 350 to 650 sounds more likely. If we have like the Fed step, if we see like a huge package get passed for like bigger refunds, in my opinion, we probably have bigger things to worry about. If it's justified through like Doge savings, that's another thing. But like, if they have to pass like a COVID like package to send money out, that means the economy is like effed. So hopefully that's not the case. But oh, by the way, I read this book. This is a really good one. I've got some other ones that I'm going to be reading. Super interesting, talking about the what things look like moving forward and how all these central banks, basically with the debt that's been racked up, like how they're going to have to continue just eventually printing. We're going to have high inflationary environments across the world. And they predict that commodities are going to do really well moving forward, like over the next 10 years. One of the ones I'm looking at is like uranium, because we're seeing nuclear have a major comeback. Like China's building a bunch of nuclear plants. A bunch of countries are. And the report came out today, actually, that Trump's looking to fast track approval on nuclear plants. I think we're going to have to see nuclear come back because the amount of energy needs coming online for AI, obviously, but then emerging countries, electric vehicles, like I think nuclear is going to have a major comeback. So I'm looking at uranium, mining companies, and ETFs. And there's a lot of commodities that are going to be in high demand. I think we're going to see shortages in over the next 10 years. It's an interesting place to potentially park some money. But I do believe, I'm going to close out here in a minute, but I do believe we could see Bitcoin continue to run up. And I think DePIN is should see a rotation. I don't know if you all saw virtuals. I covered virtuals quite a bit towards the end of last year, and they really ripped in December into January. And then when the music stopped and the market fell out, it got absolutely destroyed. But we're seeing that's like the first thing that's ripping right now is the whole virtuals ecosystem. But I think we could see a major rotation in the DePIN. But again, I think it's going to be really important to lock in those profits and be able to play the volatility, because you just don't know when the overall economy and the weakness that's kind of cracking below the surface could start to have its impact on markets. So that's how I'm planning on playing it. But thank you all for joining. Shane, B13SR, Construct Destruct. Appreciate you all. I'm going to be hopping on, like, if I'm planning on doing this, like, probably Monday, Wednesday, Friday to start with. This time, obviously, there's a ton of stuff to cover because it's been a while since I've done an update, but that way we can stay on top of all the news that's happening. Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot better to be able to keep things really current. So there's just so much happening right now. Things are getting pretty exciting right now. But appreciate you all and have a fantastic weekend. I will see you all next week. Cheers.